Today, we'll explore adjacent angles and we'll make a short answer quiz for better understanding the definition of adjacent angles. First, let's read the definition. Adjacent angles are two angles that share a common side and a common vertex, such corner point, but do not overlap. They lie next to each other and their non-common sides form a straight line or a line segment. Rachel, you may start your questions.
What is the key characteristic that distinguishes adjacent angles from other pairs of angles?
Adjacent angles must share a common side and a common vertex without overlapping. This shared vertex and side distinguish them from other angle pairs.
Can adjacent angles be classified as complementary angles? Explain your answer.
Yes, adjacent angles can be complementary if their measures add up to 90 degrees. For example, two angles measuring 40 degrees and 50 degrees that share a side and vertex are both adjacent and complementary.
If two adjacent angles form a straight line, what is the sum of their measures?
If two adjacent angles form a straight line, they are supplementary angles, and the sum of their measures is 180 degrees.
Can adjacent angles be obtuse? Provide an example to support your answer.
Yes, adjacent angles can be obtuse. For example, one angle could measure 100 degrees, and the other could measure 80 degrees, as long as they share a side and vertex.
Describe a real-world example where you might encounter adjacent angles.
Adjacent angles are made when you cut a pizza starting from the center in triangles. The definition of adjacent angles relies on the concept of a vertex, as it is the point where the common side and the two non-common sides of the angles meet.
Explain why overlapping angles cannot be considered adjacent.
Overlapping angles cannot be considered adjacent because they share more than just a common side and vertex. Their interiors intersect. The definition of adjacent angles requires that they do not overlap.
If one of two adjacent angles measures 80 degrees, what can you infer about the measure of the other angle if they form a linear pair?
If one adjacent angle in a linear pair measures 80 degrees, the other must measure 100 degrees because the two angles must sum to 180 degrees.
Can two right angles be considered adjacent? Justify your answer.
Yes, two right angles can be adjacent if they share a side and vertex and do not overlap. They fulfill the criteria for adjacent angles.
How would you differentiate between adjacent angles and vertical angles?
Adjacent angles share a common side and vertex but do not overlap, while vertical angles are formed by two intersecting lines and are opposite each other. They share a vertex but not a common side. Thanks, Rachel. See you next time.
You too. Bye.